Hello and welcome to my review of The Hawk Eternal by David Gemmell. This is the sequel to Ironhand's Daughter, which I reviewed last year. I will put a link in the description, but for those of you of a TLDR disposition, it was far from his best work, with a less than deft handling of a lot of more current talking points, and a lead that lacked the charisma of Gemmell's more interesting creations. I also have a video on his more interesting creations if you want to watch that one as well, and perhaps click subscribe when you're done. The lead of Ironhand's daughter, Sigani, remains an important figure to the plot of the sequel, but is largely absent from the story. Instead, the two main protagonists are Caswallon and Galen. Caswallon lives among the Highland clans in a society which is, at best, loosely based on the Scottish clans. There is infighting and animosity among them, much of which is caused by Caswallon's uninhibited lifestyle. But the real enemy is the Aenir, who have conquered the lowlanders in a particularly brutal fashion. Galen himself is a lowlander, rescued from the slaughter by Caswallon and raised as his son. While some of the clan leaders favour a policy of appeasement, Caswallon recognises from the off that the Aenir's belief in Valhalla means that they will inevitably be driven to war. However, his lifestyle means that he's accrued wealth, but no real political influence. Galen learns under Caswallon's guidance to be a fierce warrior and popular among his peers. The inevitable war is one-sided, and the clan survivors are led by the druids through a time gate to a place where the Aenir do not yet exist, but the clan's warriors remain behind to fight. Using the time gates, Caswallon goes to Sigani to ask for her help in the battle, but is trapped on the wrong side of the gate. However, because the gates can be used to travel through time and distance, he is able to work out how to use them over a period of 10 years and still return in the nick of time with Sigani's help to turn the tide of the battle. This sequel is rather an odd beast. The two leads, despite being largely as perfect and infallible as Sigani was in Ironhand's Daughter, are slightly more interesting. Both are something of outsiders in their clan. Galen is because he is only adopted by Caswallon and originally a lowlander, but he was also an outsider among the lowlander society because he was an orphan, so his tough upbringing makes him initially distrustful. Due to his roguish lifestyle, Caswallon is also distrusted by many, including the leaders of his own clan, so both of them have to learn to belong, to put aside selfish pursuits in favour of the greater good. Yet Caswallon's selfish pursuits are what has provided him with the resources required to help the clan survive their winter on the run from the Aenir, so it's something of a mixed message. Galen has to learn to belong, but he is swiftly accepted by his peers, so the story there doesn't really get developed much either. Caswallon has a difficult relationship with a clan leader, despite the two being childhood friends. Deva, the young lady that Galen takes a shine to, is so blinded by a prophecy that she's in danger of wasting her life. Magrig, the father of Caswallon's wife, is also the leader of a rival clan, so the two have a difficult love-hate relationship. While his daughter Meg and Caswallon are mostly saccharine sweet together, they also indulge in a touch of verbal jousting, which are some of the book's more entertaining character moments. Gemmell also develops the druids more here, and we learn something of what makes them tick. The main problem then isn't a lack of the basic elements, it's that if anything, there are too many to tie together in a single book. For example, when Sigani meets Caswallon, she calls him Redhawk. It's clear that they've had a relationship, and it had me leafing back through Ironhand's Daughter in case I'd simply forgotten it, but that relationship is not detailed here or in the prequel, so it makes Caswallon's obvious romantic interest in her seem especially awkward given that it's his love for Meg that basically motivates his entire character. When Caswallon calls Sigani a rare woman, she replies, "You will one day say that to me with even more feeling." The reaction that this creates isn't one of happiness that two beloved characters might find joy together, it's why would he do that to his wife? In The Last Sword of Power, the intertextuality it gains from the Arthurian legend foreshadows the fact that Leitha, a reluctant bride, at best will sleep with Lancelot, which then adds emotional weight to the entire proceedings. Here, a relationship between Sigani and Caswallon has no impact emotionally other than to detract from the relationship that he has already with his family. Likewise, when Sigani thinks back on her old friends, Gemmell writes, Asmodeer, the Black Battle Captain, Oberyn, the Renegade Outlander, and Redhawk, above them all Redhawk. At which point I became fairly sure that I'd missed something. I remember Asmodeer and Oberyn from Ironhand's Daughter, but I don't remember Redhawk. And I've even performed a text search on the E-version, and though Caswallon is mentioned in the first book, he isn't in it. And Redhawk is only hinted at as a character through recognisable insignia. Perhaps this is something from a third book, something not considered part of the Hawk Queen series, but the wider Draenei saga, because though I said in my review of Ironhand's Daughter that this isn't part of that, there are mentions in this one of Sipstrassi stones and the Nadir tribes, so it clearly is. Further, in the Hawk Eternal, we learn that Sigani has a lifelong rivalry with Morghese. The two are viciously opposed to each other, so much so that the eventual resolution of the antagonism is a significant part of the epilogue. Yet, again, Morghese is barely in this book, and she does very little. So I assumed I'd forgotten her from Ironhand's Daughter, but she's not in that book at all. It's very odd to introduce these new elements as such significant parts of Sigani's life, yet not to have shown us any of it in the first book. There seems, from the sequel at least, nothing about the first book that was more important. There are a couple of other things as well that suggest to me that Gemmell was not at the top of his game here. Caswallon takes Galen into the mountains to teach him about life among the clans. The father and son wandered the Farlane mountains and woods, into the high country where the Golden Eagle soared, and on into the timberline where bears had clawed their territorial marks deep into the trunks of young trees. Now Gemmell tells us that a wandering bear will compare his own claw marks to those on a tree, and if the marks on the tree are higher than his, then it stands to reason that the bear in that territory is bigger than him, so he moves on. Mind you, the bear that lives here is a canny beast, and he can't reach his own mark. In fact, he's quite small. We learn that the bear here is scaring off his potential attackers by appearing bigger than he is. By not hibernating, by going against the expected behaviour, he makes his claw marks higher on the tree by standing on the packed snow. In Prime Gemmell, the importance of this scene would be shown later when the clansmen adopted these lessons learned to somehow trick their enemies. It just doesn't happen. The two plans that the clansmen come up with are as simple as fighting in a canyon where their lack of numbers isn't as exposed. There are a handful of other more minor things as well that don't have any relevance or particular reason for being in the book, such as when Taliesin insists that Deva has to give Sigani the sword, when in truth, beyond tying in with the Arthurian legend, there isn't a reason for him not to do it himself. And if that was the only purpose for Deva to do it and not him, then any woman could have done it, surely. Gulkmai, who is an aged mystic in Book 1, but a young man here, comes out to Galen. Now, respect to him or anyone else that has to do that in a difficult time or place, but it makes no difference to the story whatsoever. And it's only even mentioned in the scene where he does it. There's no animosity from the clan towards him. It doesn't threaten the group harmony, nor is there any good that comes of it. This book was written in 1995, not 2019, so the clamour for representation wasn't so loud, but what is the point of introducing this if you're not going to deal with it in a more meaningful way? For example, why couldn't Gugmai have found someone to care about? Everyone else gets somebody to fight for. It's just not well handled at all. Time travelling is always difficult to do well, and here it's occasionally messy without ever being cleverer than Caswallon's 10-year exile being over in a blink for everybody else. Too often it leads the time travellers to say things like, "There are questions I won't answer. That is a mystery you will one day understand, but it is not for me to explain it to you." It's unimaginative and it's uninspired. There is one thing, it's quite a minor thing, but for me it's a real sign that Gemmell just wasn't at the top of his form. The Aenir visit the clans, and the general talks to Caswallon and tells him that he's proving to be troublesome, and when Caswallon insists that he's glad, Drada says no sensible man would be glad to make an enemy, and Caswallon's reply is, "I haven't made an enemy, I recognised one." Yet this comes after Caswallon has already warned more than once that an Aenir invasion is inevitable. Caswallon is in fact the most outspoken of all the clansmen concerned about an Aenir attack. Sometimes a line like that can end up a little contrived if the writer is not at the top of his game, or if he has to phrase it in a particular way to elicit the response he wants from another character. But Caswallon recognised the threat long before this point, and this is the last line of the scene, so it gets no response. A more accurate and effective line from Caswallon would be, "You were always my enemy," or something along the lines of, "Nothing changed today." In conclusion, despite being a strange and messy novel at times, this is actually more enjoyable than Ironhand's Daughter. The clansmen and women are a much more developed group in this sequel, which is not built on the first book in any meaningful way. It is a largely new and more interesting cast, but it still isn't necessarily one of Gemmell's best. While the Sigani-Caswallon relationship is particularly out of place, Caswallon's relationship with Meg is the most fun either of the Hawk Queen books has managed. The extra development of the Gates and the Druids is interesting, but as an aside really, and developing it means that other threads such as Sigani's rivalry with Morghese goes nowhere, making me wonder if another book was planned or even perhaps exists out there as part of the wider Draenei saga. The action scenes are better here as well, with more thought given to the location and attempting to draw the enemy out of their comfort zone. It's a better effort overall than Ironhand's Daughter, but it isn't Gemmell at his unmatchable best. This book is hard to recommend when Gemmell's back catalogue is so full of better options, but I certainly recommend you check out some Gemmell, particularly any of the books I recommend in my The Best of Gemmell video, and there's a link to that on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, check out some of my other content, and don't forget to subscribe while you're here. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.